I'm Neville Marten.
I'm Richard Barrett.
Welcome to another Guitarist Tone Lounge. Today we're looking at the Boss Katana range of amps. It's a range of 5 amps. It goes from 100 watt head and cabinets, a 2x12 watt combo, 1x12 watt combo, which is the one we're going to be using mostly today. There's a 50 watt combo and a little kind of practicey home amp as well. The ethos behind them is to create a proper, at its heart, a proper Class AB amp going through a proper speaker, which has actually been modelled on, and not modelled in the electronic way, but fashioned around the sound of a vintage Celestion greenback. So it's a proper amp at its heart. And then all of the Boss effects and the years and years of technology that Boss and Roland have got has been put together to add on to that all the other sounds.
That includes the Wazercraft technology, I believe.
It does. They've used some of that. The Wazercraft is their kind of boutique-ified versions of the Boss pedals. Really high quality stuff. First off, I should say that there are 3 power settings on this. There's a 0.5 of a watt, there's a 50 watt and a 100 watt. We're set on 50 watt. Boss recommend that the volume control here, there's a volume and a gain, and there's a master up here. Boss recommend that to get the best sounds that you keep this volume on maximum. A lot of the boutique amp manufacturers actually also tell you to do that, and old vintage amps nearly always sound better with the master as high as you can get it before it starts to flap. So this is what we've done. We're going to run through some sounds just to see what they're like, and we'll start with the clean setting. And this is literally as it comes out of the box. Sounds really sweet. There's a little bit of chorus and echo on there, wasn't there?
Yes, I think that might have come from the tape delay. I think that there's a bit of tape warble on the echo, which is nice. The
effects here, it's quite interesting. They've done it very cleverly, in as much as it's very comprehensive, but it's actually also very intuitive. These 3 controls, if you turn them all down to anti-clockwise, it turns them off. And then as soon as you click past their off deton position, the effect comes on. Then halfway it goes around, as I was saying before. But the interesting thing is pressing the I'll take that from off onto on, pressing the switch here. That's on red currently. If I press it now, it goes to orange. Press it again, it goes to green, and that tells you get to learn it, what the different colours mean.
Blues driver or overdrive or distortion.
Yeah, exactly. And then on the second one, on the delay effects, it's green at the moment.
Right, so what will that be? Digital?
Yeah.
So it's just a clear digital.
And that's red now.
Okay, so that's much warmer, more analogy.
Yeah.
And that's the tape one. I can hear the little bit of warble in there. I like that.
A little bit of distortion on the back end of the repeats.
So I guess that's one of the functions you can edit. If you plug in your USB, you can adjust your warble
Exactly. And they don't come with it, but there are various foot switches that are available that go from fairly simple switching to pretty much a lot of what's on the panel here. So it's worth investigating them.
You can step through, I think, can't you? So step through the channels, or you can instantly access, go from channel 1 to 4 with one click.
Yeah, like the presets that we've got here, these channels 1 to 4, which we'll look at later on. We were on clean there. We're going to move to crunch. Now, crunch is obviously riffy stuff, possibly a bit of bluesy type of lead, and possibly up to kind of sub-rock, Thin Lizzy's kind of Gary Moore kind of sounds. quite easy to adjust on the fly. It is a normal amp. You could think of it as a normal amp, not think of it, as Richard said, an effects, a bunch of effects in a box. It's not that at all. That was actually that you went a bit from Blues Breakers to Cream there in that.
Yeah, I just
sound,
decided to add a little bottom. Yes.
Quite nice.
I can choose to make it a bit more brash if I want.
Yeah,
I like
and
that.
you can. The great thing about it is turning back on. This is obviously a common criticism of digital types of amps, so that they don't respond well to what you do on the guitar in terms of the tone controls, volume controls. This really does, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I can go. It can't help me be in tune, but it does. It does respond very well.
Must be the lights.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay, let's go further on here. The next level of gain here is lead.
Right.
Exactly
Okay.
what you think. It's going for a pretty rocky kind of sound. It's what it's designed to do.
So this is with the EQ set to manual, so I'm just thinking I'm instinctively reaching for the presence control as I usually do for a lead sound. So let's see, shall we?
Add a bit more echo onto that, see what happens.
Sorry, you were about to speak then and I didn't stop playing.
I didn't. I was just going to say, we've got the gain on about 50% here, so there's tons of drive there, but it's still sounding very natural. It does sound like you've got an amp cranked, possibly with a couple of pedals in front of it, but it's very, very natural sounding. So that's a lead setting. Let's quickly go on to the brown setting. This speaks for itself, really.
Right.
That's that kind of Van Halen used to call it the brown sound, and this I think comes from one of the Wazacraft pedals.
Let's see.
So that's us using the amp as the Katana as a pretty straightforward amp and adding a bit of effects on the top. It's like it's a 4-channel amp there with the clean, crunch, lead and brown. So that's what we've essentially done. We're going to move on now, and earlier on we did a couple of 4 presets in fact, just to see how easy it was to do, and it's very easy. All you do is you set, like we just have there, that's on the brown sound. We've set a sound. In order to save that to one of these channels, it makes logical sense to go, cleaner through to dirtier, in my view. So that's what we've done. So in order to save that to one of these presets, you just press the little button, wait till it flashes once, and then it's stored. I won't do that now because we've already done one. So here's what we did earlier on. Shall we go? I'll go through clean, through the dirty. Here's our clean with a bit of chorus and delay on it.
It stays lovely and clean without
does.
being brittle,
Yeah,
actually.
it does,
That's
it does.
worth pointing out.
And of course, if you get to the gig and you've got in a small pub that's full of carpets and loads of people, you might find you want to boost a bit of treble in it and do this and that and the other. You can do that on the fly. Just adjust the tone you've got, save it again, and you've adjusted it for that particular night.
Yeah, within the preset without changing everything else,
Yeah,
which is great. Actually,
exactly,
yeah.
which is how you'd use a normal amp. Just if you're using a normal old-fashioned amp, it would do exactly the same thing. Here's our second preset, which is channel 2, which we've gone for a crunchy kind of, we'll have a listen. In the room here, you would not know this wasn't, you know, what it's purporting to be, which is a proper classic valve amp with a proper speaker in it, working hard. And in fact, I'll just quickly show you how loud it can go. We've got it set in the room. This is set, it's a 50 watt amp. We've got it set on about 35, 40%.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
give us a quick.
I mean, I'm a bit old school and I like to play quite loud, if possible, and actually got ringing in one of my ears because of it. So I think that qualifies me to speak with authority on this, and it's loud. Yeah, it's not surprisingly good or anything, or surprisingly loud. It's a loud amp. It's
and I just took
50.
it up from about 35-40% to 50%. I just took it up to kind of 12 o'clock, and as it goes up louder and louder, it does what a normal amp does, which is respond, you know, differently. And as Boss liked to point out, as you have it louder, everything starts to interact. All the components interact better. The speaker interacts with the power stage, blah blah blah. It's common knowledge, and this does exactly that same thing.
Yeah, it compresses a little bit, if you can call it that. Yeah, things get a bit more squished, a bit more forgiving to play.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next preset. This is our lead sound.
Oh yes.
And what we were looking for here when we did it earlier on was a kind of in the Satriani ballpark, you know, nice and smooth. Well, you have a listen.
Yeah. There's a real snappy attack to it, actually, which I am guessing is you can alter with the deep edit on the tone control of the drive or something.
Or even basically on here, if you felt you need a bit more treble, a bit more presence, a bit less treble or presence or whatever, just do it. And if you want to save it, save it. If you just want to use it for the moment, don't save it and do that later. What we didn't mention earlier on, there's a flashing control here, which is your tap for your delay speed. You wouldn't want to do that every night on there, so that would be on one of the pedals that you could purchase. That was our lead sound. Here's the brown sound preset that we did, and again, this was obviously brown, so we've gone for a kind of Eddie kind of vibe on this. See if you think it's about right.
If I go on any longer, I'll get into copyright territory. I'm trying to stay out of that.
Do a bit of tapping.
I'll try. It's been a while. It's a lot of fun.
It would have to be a very picky person, far pickier than I, and with far better ears than I, to say that doesn't sound exactly like you want it to sound. Would you agree?
Yeah, great. I love the fact that that's coming out of a 1x12, and the open back will spread the sound around beautifully on a smaller gig like that, where you haven't got a great monitor rig, for instance.
Yeah, yeah.
As you'll see, by the magic of television, I've changed over to a single coil guitar, just to show you how the amp interacts with a single coil pickup. That'll be relevant to a lot of you guys. So start with the clean again?
Yeah, we're going to go try it. We haven't plugged this in. We're literally, the sounds that we had are on there, and we're going to see what it sounds like and quickly amend them to suit the style of guitar.
Yes, yeah, my gut feeling is we may tweak the presence, but I don't know, before we do that.
Yeah, let's see, yeah.
Taking my head off at all.
On a clean sound, you probably want that brightness because it's the kind of sound you'd be looking for. I think when we turn up to the dirtier sounds, you might want to knock some of that off. Let's try.
Yes.
Let's go to, before I do this, we haven't mentioned, on this control here, there's actually an acoustic setting, so you can plug an electro acoustic in it, and we haven't tried it, but we're assured it sounds fantastic. Obviously, it's a pretty simple sound to get, so it should sound fantastic. Okay, let's move up. We're on crunch now.
This is quite a bright guitar, so as a reference point, I'm quite surprised.
It's not offending my ears at all.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you put it going to single, say this was a regular old Fender Deluxe or something like that, you'd expect it to go from what it was with the humbuckers to what it is with the single coils. Okay, you might knock a bit of treble off, might knock a bit of presence off, possibly boost a bit of mid, but as I say, that doesn't offend my ears at all. It's a very nice sound. Do you want to amend it at all?
No, I don't think
Sounds
I do.
great.
No,
Sounds really great. Okay, we're going to move on to lead. You can hear the guitar isn't driving the front end of the amp as hard, and again, that's another typical response feature of a proper amp, which is what this is.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I'd be interested to hear that sound with a teeny bit less presence, just to see.
Yeah, go on then.
To my eyes,
Okay,
I mean, I'm sat behind
yeah,
it, so
exactly. Let's take that down. That was on about 40%. I want to take it down to 20. See where we go from there. I put a little bit more gain on, not very much, about 10%, and I took about 10% of the treble off, and it just fattened it up a lot. Yeah. Sounded great to me. Okay, let's go brown and see how, maybe this is lighter brown, and than darker brown.
Yeah. The brownness seems to translate as a more cranked feel to it as I'm hitting the strings.
Oh, I was hearing a kind of hot country kind of tone there, you know, Brad Paisley kind of area.
Right.
To do a few country-ish kind of licks on that kind of sound. Yeah, it's very, very versatile. I was amazed at that, actually. Again, it shows that the amp responds to the guitar. Very often, historically, amps that you'd associate this with being don't do that. You get the sound of the amp, and the guitar, it might as well be anything. But
yes, yeah, or it will sound okay, but it doesn't feel very good to play, and it's quite hard to get the same result.
Exactly.
You don't feel
You
inspired.
can hear the real sonic characteristics of that guitar coming through. Going back to the effects for a minute, we don't have time to go deeply into all the effects, but we'll quickly just demonstrate what these controls do and what the buttons do, which switch between the type of effect. So here we are, we're on the crunch channel, so it's cleanish to slightly dirty. It's off at the moment. I want to turn it on to booster, and this will go through 3 different levels of boost on the switch. Now we've moved on to the modulation. We've gone past the centre détente place, and we're moving on to modulation. So if we carry on playing now. So the button selects which type of modulation, in this case, you've got, and the control itself just gives you more and more depth of that. So that was that. We're going to move on to, I'll turn that off, We'll move on to the delay and effects one. And this is going to go from various kinds of delays through to auto wah, isn't it?
Oh, yes, I believe you're right.
Okay, now here we go then. Off at the moment. Lovely. And finally, the reverb. the reverb goes from plate to spring to hall, and again, that controls the depth of it. The effects sound really natural, and they really blend in very nicely with the kind of levels of distortion and drive that Boss have built into this. There's 9 sonic presets that we've gone through here, the the auto wah, the different distortions and delays and modulations. If you want to plug your laptop in, there's more, isn't there, Richard?
Absolutely. I mean, I understand it that there are all the Boss effects you could imagine, all the delays and the distortions, plus quite a few other effects that maybe Boss didn't originally make, but does a really good job of in this amp, like big muff type distortions, if I'm allowed to say that. And
there's a rat as well, I think. There's 50 that you can choose from and download to the amp if you so desire.
And I think 3 simultaneous effects running at once on each channel.
Yeah. So it's a very versatile thing, and what I like about it is you can be as complicated as you like with it, or you can do it as I would do it, which is slightly more organically. I think Richard would probably do it slightly more organically as well. But you know, if you're 18 and not slightly more than that in this case, you'll probably want to go right deeply into this and use it in the most advanced manner, which you could do.
I mean, I noticed from where I'm sat here, actually, there is an effects loop here as well. So I guess you can hook in any other favourite effects here too.
You can on the 100, you can't on the 50 and below. But, I mean, there's so much on here, should you want it. Or, as I say, if you want to treat it as a bog standard amp with some clever effects and stuff added on, or not added on, actually incorporated, you'll have a great time with it.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Okay, so Rich, what's your honest impressions of the Katana?
Right, well, a few great ideas happening here, so I'd like to go through those. As you can see, we've got this at an angle now. There's a little foot underneath that you can click out, and it puts the amp at a different angle, which will make you popular with the sound man. I really like that. Yeah. I love the fact that it works as a proper amp. If I'm allowed to say a couple of things that I think I like less about it, the presets that it comes with from the factory. I think that this is a common failing in multi-sound units, is it comes with every rocket ship, every super flanger kind of effect that I don't really know anyone that uses that. So perhaps maybe keep some of those for the people that are interested in all the effects, but put a few more of these great amp sounds in there.
Yeah, I think the real world sounds, I mean, the way we did the demo today was to start real world and build up. Now I think that's a better way to do it than to say, here's all the bells and here's all the whistles, take them away at your leisure. I think it's better to do it the other way around.
That's right, because I think our first impression wasn't as good as the impression that we came away with, simply because we had to plough through layers of effects.
But that's not to denigrate it in any way, because once we got to grips with it, which didn't take very long, it sounded like a real amp, and it played like a real amp, and it responded. Of course, not being valve, it's light to carry. This is a 100-watt one. It's pretty small. They do a 2x12 version, which is same thing but a little bit wider, obviously. And they do the 50-watt, which isn't quite as well equipped, mainly with things like effect send and returns. But other than that, the sounds are all identical. But obviously it won't be as loud. We've set this at 50, and the 50 is that maximum, and it would go down from that.
Absolutely. So perhaps, rather than the negative about it, it would be to advise anyone trying this out, spend a few minutes on it, take some of the effects off and listen to the core tone of it. It's worth the effort. Absolutely.
The other thing I really liked, which I wasn't expecting in quite spectacular fashion, was when Richard changed from the humbucking nags to his 3 single coil nags. It just sounded like, oh, I've now plugged a different guitar into my amp.
Yes.
And it didn't suddenly go all ridiculous and you had to tame everything. Lots of the sounds we kept pretty much as they had been and just use the difference.
In fact, I was ready, I put in the qualifying, we may need to adjust the presence. I was worried that it would be clang, but not so,
and it
not
wasn't.
at all.
It just brought out the inherent characteristics of the guitar, which is what you want in any amp.
So that's the Boss Katana range, and I think that Nev and I can agree that we've been very pleasantly surprised by it.
definitely so. I hadn't played it till I came in this morning. I spent about half an hour, 45 minutes with it on my own, getting to grips with it. Richard did the same when he came in, and what you saw us do here today was in real time, and we did it as we were doing it. Yeah, it's a great little amp, and the other thing, Richard, is the price. We couldn't believe it.
I mean, what is it in the UK now?
Under £300, 250 something.
Yeah.
Which is, when you consider what you're getting, that's a quarter or fifth as cheap as a classic little valve guitar amp, with nothing like the facilities that it's got.
So you've got, hopefully a bit of change left for the foot controller.
Absolutely, which you will need because it doesn't come with it. Well, there you go. All we'd like to say is thank you for visiting the Guitarist Tone Lounge, and we'll see you next time.